Hi there, my name is Dylan Byers and I'm a co-founder at Aplo Group, and at Aplo Group I oversee our growth team. So at Aplo Group we are directly responsible for helping some of our clients set key performance indicators, some of which are obviously tailored around paid acquisition performance. So today we're going to go through some of the variables that a lot of people don't consider whenever they're managing ad accounts, whether it's an employee, an agency, a contractor, or a business owner themselves running their paid ads. Oftentimes some of these things are not taken into account. So starting off, we're just going to start with variable costs. So variable costs are things like cost of goods sold, cost of delivery, credit card processing fees. You can bucket in returns there, shipping if you incur some of those costs, things like this. This will effectively allow you to understand your gross margin, and this is step number one in identifying KPIs for paid acquisition. The reason why is because you want to understand whenever you acquire a customer at different costs, what or how much margin or what cost per acquisition do you have to obtain to at least break even. From there, you can understand as well at different costs per acquisition, how much profit do I have based off of my margin, as well as if I'm acquiring customers at a loss, how much money do I have to make back over time to get back over my break-even point from a gross margin perspective. Now getting into fixed costs. So this is commonly overlooked in the e-commerce world when talking about paid acquisition performance. Now, in certain scenarios, this is much less of a concern, but for specifically businesses that are starting out in the early stages, it's really important to understand that oftentimes your KPIs as a business shouldn't necessarily be set as your business is currently constructed. One of the most common mistakes we see business owners make is they set their cost per acquisition goals or their return on ad spend goals based off of the current realities of their fixed costs as a percentage of overall revenue. Naturally, if you have a lot of fixed cost as a percentage of your overall revenue, you're going to have a lot of profit coming in from all of your customers and just to cover those costs. However, if you can scale your business without necessarily scaling your fixed cost linearly, there is oftentimes a lot of opportunity with economies of scale. So kind of getting into a brief example here. What we're looking at here inside of this spreadsheet is a simple breakdown that we set up for virtually all of our clients at Aplo Group whenever we're working with them from a growth perspective, aka managing their paid acquisition as well as their email and SMS initiatives. So what we're looking at here is firstly your fixed costs. So obviously these are all arbitrary numbers. This could be different for every single brand. But what we're trying to illustrate here is in this scenario with $38,000 a month of fixed costs and a variable cost of 25% of overall sale value, aka they have 75% gross margins, at different amounts of ad spend increments, where do they break even? Where are they 5% profitable, 10% profitable, 15% profitable, 20% profitable, etc.? Because back to my original point, let's say you were a business with $38,000 a month in fixed costs and you were only spending $500 a day. Just to be 5% profitable, your holistic full business ROAS, so all of your revenue divided by ad spend, would have to be a 5.14. Whereas let's just take this to $2,000 per day, you would only need to achieve a 2.38 to be 5% profitable. So point being, it's very easy in the early stages to set unrealistic return on ad spend goals because you think that's what you need to achieve, when in reality, what you actually have to achieve is economies of scale by making your fixed costs a lower percentage of overall revenue. Now we're getting into LTV. So LTV is the other side when setting KPIs for your media spend goals. Oftentimes, especially early on, it's super important to make sure that you're profitable in acquisition. Now, everybody has different access to financing, and different business models require different types of financing depending on the realities of your acquisition-based margin that you actually get from a gross profit standpoint. However, especially as you start to scale, one of the ways you unlock more opportunity is by increasing your LTV. Now, there's lots of different ways to do this via email, SMS, as well as innovation on the side of what types of products and offers you are selling. However, nonetheless, strictly on the media buying side, a great way to set KPIs is to understand your LTV, because especially as you get to larger amounts of spend, it's not unreasonable to assume that your cost of acquisition might go up and or your ROAS might go down. Naturally, those are two very similar things that generally coincide with each other. But one way to basically rationalize maintaining new volume despite the loss in efficiency on the acquisition side is by ensuring that you understand the LTV, so you still understand on average roughly what you can expect from a profit standpoint. Now, LTV is a very interesting term because it implies lifetime, which is not necessarily the most practical way to run a business. So you want to understand your LTV on a fixed amount of time frame. Now, naturally, the businesses that are the most well-financed can more comfortably handle having LTV paybacks on very long periods, or basically the amount of time it takes to break even, or the amount of time it takes to achieve a certain desired amount of profit per customer generated, stuff like that. But in short, whether you're a small business or a large business, understanding things like your 30-day LTV, your 60-day LTV, your 90-day LTV, your 6-month LTV, your 1-year LTV can help you have more confidence in spending large sums of money as you scale, depending on what the realities are for your CPA at any given time. Now getting into profit. So obviously on the media buying world, paid advertising world, we're always talking about profit from the actual ads themselves. However, one of the most important KPIs to track when scaling a paid media budget is actually net margin for the entire business. Because let's say you're scaling all of your customer acquisition super aggressively and your margin on acquisition isn't actually that high. Let's say you only have a few percentage points of profitability on your acquisition. If you're scaling too fast on acquisition, all of a sudden, let's say your return customer revenue as a percentage of overall revenue went from 25% to as low as 10%, as an arbitrary example. All of a sudden, despite the fact that you may be very happy with your paid media performance, your net margin may have gone down quite a bit while you're scaling quite aggressively. Now, what happens here, or what can happen here, is depending on how your inventory terms are set up and how you invest in inventory, your top line growth might be outpacing your bottom line growth, which means you can't actually keep up with the inventory investment as a byproduct of the realities of how fast you're scaling in relation to how much your profit is scaling. Now, obviously there's other ways to finance inventory and scaling and stuff like that, but every single business is different. Every single business owner has different risk tolerances. And when you're speaking just purely on scaling with profit with scaling top line, sometimes despite the fact that paid media performance is so strong, you might actually want to make sure that you're scaling at a certain rate whilst maintaining a certain net margin, not just from the paid media side, but from the business side as a whole. Wrapping up here, it's important to reiterate that when you're making ad spend decisions, it's important to obviously reference the data inside of the various advertising managers. Obviously, you have their meta platforms, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Google, amongst a whole bunch of other advertising platforms. Point being though, when it comes to deciding how aggressive you should be on scaling, it's important to reference other data points outside of these advertising accounts, because these data points arguably matter even more. And if you want help in understanding how to kind of relate these types of metrics into your paid advertising decision making, feel free to reach out and chat with the team here at Aplo Group. We'd love to be of assistance.